light on me. Open up my eyes so I can see. When I look up in the darkest night, and I know everything is gonna be alright. In deep confusion, in great despair, when I reach out for him, he is there. When I am lonely as I can be, and I know that God shines his light on me. Reach out for him, reach out for him. He'll be there, he'll be there. Within your troubles, within your troubles, you can share, you can share. If you live, if you live, the life you love, the life you love, you get the blessing, yeah, from above, from above. Heals the sick, and he heals the lame. Says you can do it too, in Jesus' name. I lift you up and he turns you around, and it puts your feet back on higher ground. Within your trouble, you can share, you can share. Oh, you can use his higher power every day, yeah, any hour. Heals the sick, he heals the lame, and he says you can heal them too in Jesus' name. He lifts you up and he turns you around. Put your feet back on, put your feet higher ground, higher ground. Shines his light. Whenever God shines his light on you, on you. He is the way, he is the truth, he is the light. Put your feet back, higher ground, put your feet back.
Don't think of him as gone away. His journey's just begun. Life holds so many facets. The earth is only one. Just think of him as resting from the sorrows and the tears in a place of warmth and comfort where there are no days or years. Think how he must be wishing that we could know today that nothing but our sadness can really pass away, and think of him as living in the hearts of those he touched, for nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much. Welcome, friends, today as we gather in this place, and a special welcome to those joining us on live stream and for those who will see a recording of the service at a later time. Today is a sad day of having to say goodbye, but it's an important day as we come to remember, we come to celebrate and honour and value the life of Kieth Angus Offer. My name is David Taylor. It's my privilege and my honour today to conduct this service of farewell for Kieth, as it was my absolute honour to look after Beth's service when she passed away and we had the service here in this same building. So it's very appropriate that we come today into this place. As you came to the church, just inside the door, there was a memorial book for you to sign. If you didn't take the opportunity to sign the book, would you please do that before you leave today? Also, if you have a mobile phone, I would invite you to ensure that it's switched off or put onto silent for the duration of the service. It's important today that we take time. We take time to spend this time thinking about Kieth, hearing story about him, and spending time not rushing, but hearing all about him and reminding ourselves of the very special man that he has been in so many lives. On behalf of Mark and Wendy, Michelle and their families, a heartfelt thank you to all of you for being here today. When we come to say goodbye, particularly when you say goodbye to your dad, you're going to get one of those, and he was a really special dad. When you come here today, it's very hard to have to come to terms with the fact that Kieth has gone physically. He remains in many other ways, but he has gone physically. And it's really hard to understand some of the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that accompany us. And when our society teaches us to keep them all underneath and keep them undercover, I think today is a day that we can express ourselves freely, openly and honestly. To support one another is important, to give to each other that sense of comfort and consolation, the encouragement and the strength to face the days ahead is what we do here today. What we do in the weeks ahead. And maybe in a couple of weeks' time, when the flowers and cards stop coming and life gets on its busy way, that's a time to give Mark and Michelle a call and say g'day. Maybe get together, have a cuppa or something, and share a story about Kieth. As you support one another today, as we walk this journey together, we celebrate and we honour a much-loved father, a father-in-law, Pop Beef, great Pop, a friend. We stop to consider the impact of his life. We stop to consider the influence of his life over his 93 years of life. And we understand that the influence of his life is in your life for all of your life. When we gather today, it's important that we take time to look back, to remember shared experiences, joys shared together, sorrows borne together, relationships held in spite of the pressures that life brings our way, generosity given, and sometimes failures forgiven. You never did that, did you, Mark? You never mucked up when you were a boy, did you? It's important too that we just don't look back, but we look inwardly and see where it is that Kieth has left his indelible fingerprint, his mark, that influence of his life in your life. And it's important too that we look forward. Looking forward can be hard because there's that deep sense of emptiness because he's no longer here, but there is also that deep sense of fullness because he's been here. We carry that with us into the future with all of the storytelling, for it won't take much for you to think about this man, thinking about his character, his love, his affection, his sense of humour, his competitiveness, generosity, remembering that he was a good leader, and in the fire service particularly, he was a great leader. his stubbornness and determination, maybe sometimes, and maybe a little bit more than sometimes. His love for his family. Kieth has made his mark on the world, and we say thank you for that. As you find your thoughts drifting back, think about that very special thing or things that you can look back at with Kieth and see those important parts of his life that have been infused into yours. For those connections and those shared times, his life imparted to yours will be a part of your life for always. You see, when we have that love and friendship, it's the bond that helps us to make the people who we are. So let's focus today on the good times. Let us focus on the good memories as together we pay tribute to Kieth and remember him with love. Remember him with pride, with respect, and with admiration. I'd like to share with you a scripture reading, and it's in your order of service. It's a scripture reading from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. And it's a scripture that many of you will know quite well. Excuse me a minute. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. We could wax eloquently, and it's very dangerous to give a pastor a microphone, and I hope that I can do it justice today. But we could wax eloquently on that scripture for a long time, for thinking about the times in our lives. And I was thinking about this, and as a dad, and now as a grandfather, and you travel with the kids, they often say, "Are we there yet?" But what time is it? And how often do we ask each other in our homes, what's the time? And it's interesting that several thousand years ago, Solomon penned these words that seem so appropriate for us today. For everything there is a season. A time to be born and a time to die. In an instant, in one short sentence, the author has expressed how fragile life is. For we can be here today and gone tomorrow. It may be that the most important question we can answer is, what time is it? What time is it in our lives as we look at our seasons? We know that we are creatures of time by the way we set our clocks, by that stupid alarm clock that wakes you up in the morning next to your bed. We have watches on our arms. We have diaries, and we set everything to a schedule. Appointments are something that drive us, don't they? They keep us on track. And we know larger amount of times by measuring months and years and decades. We also know the seasons of spring and summer and autumn and winter. But perhaps time should be measured in more than hours or days or years. We will hear the dates today. The date Kieth was born, the date he died, and you see them on your order of service. And we know that he lived 93 years. We have a measurement of time. And we are sitting here thinking that he lived a full, a long and a satisfying life, and a life that impacted many people. But isn't life more than a measurement of years or accomplishments? Perhaps our lives should be measured by the relationships that we have with others. That's why you're here today, isn't it? Because you knew Kieth. Because he's important to you. Your family, your friends, you have come to say goodbye to someone who is special. someone you knew, you know, and that's important. But let me ask you, what time is it for you today? The writer of Ecclesiastes said there is a time and season for every event under the heavens. Time to weep and mourn. And I'd say for you, family today, friends, that today is a time for mourning, for sadness, but yet for a joy and a thankfulness and a gratitude. It hurts to lose someone we love. Don't deny your feelings. Let them be. Grieve long, grieve full, grieve as much as you need, for when you grieve, healing takes place. And today I would say is a time of remembering. I've often told people that funerals are a bit bittersweet, because they are. They're bitter because you've lost someone you love, and they're sweet because you have so many memories that you can share. I'm thankful that God has made us with the capacity to remember. Think of the good times. Think of the funny times. Think of those productive times. Think of the experiences, and yes, the tough times too. And in your remembering, you will celebrate the life of Kieth. Today is also a day of comfort because the one who Kieth believed in, Jesus, said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I go to prepare a place for you, and I will return to take you with me if you believe in me. Even in the midst of death, he doesn't leave us. In the midst of our pain, he walks with us. He who faced death himself and conquered it will never leave us. Isn't that a thought of comfort? And so I ask again, what time is it? A time of grieving. It's also a time of remembering, and can also be a time of comfort as we remember Kieth. Now, it's important today that we take time. We're going to hear one of Kieth's favourite hymns, and he stipulated that this hymn would be played at his funeral. And so we've got to do as we're told, don't we? And so we're going to listen to The Old Rugged Cross, and then straight after we'll hear the fireman's prayer.
On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for the world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. In the old rugged cross, stained with blood so divine, a wondrous beauty I see. For 'twas on that old cross Jesus suffered and died to pardon and sanctify me. So I'll cherish the my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a cross.
Use this one. It's good. This is the firefighter's prayer. When I am called to duty, God, whenever flames may rage, give me strength to save some life, whatever be its age. Help me embrace a little child before it is too late, or save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me to guard my every neighbour and protect their property. And if according to my fate I am to lose my life, please bless with your protecting hand my family, friends, and all life.
It's important today that we take time to hear tributes and story of Kieth's life. Firstly, Mark and Michelle will come. Then we will hear from Nathan and Melinda. Melinda's, that's right. And then Joe Parker will come, and then Brendan Davis will finish it off. So, when you're ready.
It is with huge love, pride, honour and sadness that I paint a picture of Dad's life. I'm grateful that I'm the lucky daughter to have been able to call this wonderful man my dad. It's about Dad's life. Dad was born in 1929 on his family's property, Woodley, on the banks of Yarraman Creek near Nanango. This was during the Great Depression, so for Dad, living during hard times would become his norm, his compass. Maybe that's why he loved life so much. Everything after that was easy. Dad was a typical farm boy. He had to wear many hats, repairing machinery, driving the tractor, planting and harvesting. His parents were Arthur and Eva Offer. He was the third youngest of 12 children. Dad was a Presbyterian denomination. He lived his faith through his love of his family and friends, his kindness and good deeds through the community, and his attention to detail in his working world. Dad loved Scottish music. His mum was of Scottish descent and also country music, and we would often hear him on the front veranda playing his piano accordion or his mouth organ, playing his favourite tunes throughout all of his life. When Dad was born, there was very few cars in Australia, and the changes he saw throughout his life are mind-boggling, but he always adapted and remained contemporary. Thank you. Most of you would know that Dad had an amazing memory and was able to pull out whatever information you may be requiring. For example, he knew the Latin language and all the derivatives. This, I believe, is one of the reasons why he was so good at the very hard crosswords. From as young as 6 years old, Dad was learning German from a lady who was working on the farm, to which end he could have a conversation with a German person right up to his later life. Teachers stayed at their home, so there was a lot of homeschooling. The home was also the local telephone exchange for the area. Dad and his siblings had to milk 100 head of cattle before school each day. He also worked the farm for his dad during the war years. Dad was always fit and wiry. When he was 14, he went with a close mate of his, Frankie Murray, during the Christmas holidays on their bikes for a trip to the Gold Coast, first travelling along Sandy Creek through Esk. They stopped and asked farmers each night if they could stay in the barn and would always be invited in, given dinner and a bed for the night. Those were the good old days. Although they didn't make it to the Gold Coast, they made it back in time to start school. 14 years old, gone for 6 weeks, on their own. Golly gosh. Dad loved animals and would not put up with any cruelty to them. He once threw his father out of his own dairy when his father was unkind to his favourite cow, Daisy. He left home at the age of 17. He worked as a timber getter with his brothers in the hills at the back of the Sunshine Coast. He then went out west and spent time repairing fences with 2 mates. During Dad's bachelor years, he was heavily sports orientated. He was a boxing champion, a darts champion, a cricketer, and a tennis player. Any sport going, he was there. Pool competition, the fire brigade. Then he headed up north to do cane cutting and had many friends in the Italian community where he picked up the Italian language. While in North Queensland, he worked as a prison warden in a correctional centre for a period of time. He then worked in the fire brigade in Ingham. He was 28 years old. During this time up north, he was training to be a pilot and was almost qualified when he got news that he had a job at the Redcliffe Fire Brigade. He jumped at the opportunity, but had to leave behind his pilot training, as in those days he was not able to transfer his flying qualifications. There was no recognition of prior learning in those days. After moving to Redcliffe, when he was out on the town with a mate, he met Mum. It was love at first sight. As corny as that sounds, they loved and adored each other. They were together for the rest of their lives. Dad married when he was 29 years old, which for those times was quite old. Dad's first true love was Bet, and of course Mark and I came along. And after that, all his grandchildren, and in recent years, great-grandchildren. He loved all of us. And I think we can include his whole community, of which he felt such a strong and special part of. Life in his early years of Redcliffe was busy. In those days, firemen quite often had a second job. Dad worked his second job as a builder. Our home in Reedy Street had many an extension or renovation over the years, all thanks to Dad's skills and Mum's requests. Dad always took pride in putting on his fireman's uniform, and he always looked dashingly handsome in it. He loved his job. In many ways, Dad was a man ahead of his time. He often prepared our evening meals when Mum was working her 9-to-5 job, and Dad's roster gave him spare time to be a house dad. He was involved in the early years of the Redcliffe Rugby League Old Boys Club, and he was president for a while there in the early times of the club. Then came along soccer. I know there are many of his friends from his soccer years here today. That was his love. Dad's sense of humour never left him. During one of our many talks in recent years, he relayed a story about his brother Arthur being shot during World War II. He survived, so that's good. I asked him innocently what happened. With Dad's dry wit, his reply was, he got in front of a bullet. Dad's teachings resonate with me every day. I hear his instructions as I'm driving my car. As I'm working, as I'm working on my renovation project, as I'm loving my family. Someone special said to me recently that our real inheritance from our parents are the life lessons and family values we receive. Mark and I and our families are very blessed in this regard. Dad had a strong moral compass with kindness and love being woven through all he did. It's a thread that holds us all together and makes us who we are. Thank you for always being there for us, Dad, under any circumstance.
Easy way out and say what she said. But I won't. Dad was my hero. Don't touch me. He was the man that I hoped and aspired to be. It's going to be long. He was always loving, placid, kind, unjudgmental and understanding. He was possibly ahead of his time. I think you said that last time. In many ways, as he was inclusive to all regardless of disability, gender preference, colour, race or religion, and loved to spend time with all people regardless of differences. Dad and Mum just saw the person. If that person needed help, then they knew that Dad and Mum would 100% be there for them any time of the day or night. They would do it without fuss, and it wasn't a bother to them. Over the years, we as a family took in many people that needed help or support, or even just a roof over their head. Some stays were briefer than others, but even though some weren't family, all still treated us as family, and they was treated as family. It always was sad when they did leave. Dad and Mum would always sacrifice themselves for people. They would drop things they were doing and go out and help any time of day or night. It was not a pain to them. For them, it was a privilege to help someone, be it family, friend or stranger. As an adult, Christmas mornings at Dad and Mum's was at times crazy with up to 70 or so people turning up for a bacon and eggs barbecue. Everyone expected it and loved it, and I sweated like a pig for about 3 hours. Christmas time was always amazing and unforgettable. We had many family and our friends, Dad and Mums, come and stay. There was always plenty of food, drinks, and the main thing for us kids, presents. Yes, we were spoiled, and I am pretty sure that we deserved it. If you grew up being a Redcliffe fireman's child or grandchild at Christmas, then you were super lucky. Michelle and I and our children were all privileged and loved it. There were slides, horse rides, various games, tennis, a supervised pool table for the older kids, food, ice cream. Happy kids everywhere, especially when Santa, on top of a fire engine with sirens roaring, arrived to give all of us kids our presents. It's something I'll never forget. Probably can't do that now. We as kids certainly love Christmas, and I assure everybody here that Dad and Mum weren't shy on enjoying and celebrating Christmas themselves, as quite a people here will probably know. When the grandchildren came along, the meaning of spoilt was 100 times magnified. Although I probably knew, it has been recently confirmed that any of the good food that they were eating was often balanced out by Dads beautifully with lollies, chocolate, biscuits and soft drinks. Dad and Mum loved sport and were completely committed to their grandchildren's activity. Both Michelle's and my children were sporty. Carl, Melinda, Dane, Reese and Nathan were involved in several sports. When Melinda sailed for Australia and France, it was Dad and Mum that took her there. And they later journeyed on to England to visit my cousin Faye and family. They took Nathan to Canberra for the Australian titles for futsal. They attended many sporting tournaments to watch grandkids participate and loved every second of it. Michelle and I both played many sports growing up. Michelle played hockey, softball, cricket, tennis, netball. I played soccer, cricket, basketball, volleyball, hockey, rugby league and rugby union. Dad and Mum attended every sport they possibly could. Dad was also very happy to officiate in any games if needed. Dad served a long time with Redcliffe Soccer Club, around 13 years. He served as committee member, vice president, president, delegate to Brisbane men's and junior soccer, along with many other roles. Due to the merging of Redcliffe City and Margate, he was also given a life membership of Peninsula Power FC. He was also a life member of Redcliffe PCYC Football Club and the Redcliffe PCYC branch. Dad was a very good sportsman in his own right. He was a boxer, and one stage, until work took him away, was preparing to fight for a Queensland title. He was chosen to represent rugby league. He was chosen to represent in rugby league for North Queensland in the prestigious Foley Shield, but turned up from the farm with dirty boots and was relegated to the bench, although he did take the field. He was a representative cricketer, an A-grade tennis player, a darts champion and a pill shark. I was told in the last couple of days by a fireman that at the fire brigade, Dad and fireman Stan Rosser would team up and play doubles against many of the younger firemen and at times new recruits. Their plan was to throw a couple of games early, and when the money was put on the table, they'd bring their A game and take the money. However, it became a bit fairer when the others noticed that Dad and Stan were both a bit short-sighted and decided to play the white ball as far away as possible from Dad and Stan's intended target ball. I used to love coming home from school and going to the fire brigade to play pool with Dad. I could go at certain times between 4 and 6 p.m. But if the fire alarms went off and they had to go to a fire, I had to sit on a designated chair until they came back. And I was actually frightened to leave it. I'm just glad I didn't have to go to the toilet. I was also recently told that Dad was deputy chief, and at times there were weddings held on the lawn which was in pristine condition. The firemen apparently hated having to mow it, but one stinking hot afternoon, one of the firemen that really hated it was called on to mow it, and intentionally dropped the blade down two notches and began mowing. Another fireman let Dad know what was happening, and they all heard Dad loudly screaming, "Fireman Goopy," who's here today, Fireman Goopy immediately switched the mower off and never, on my watch, go near a mower again. Fireman Goopy, was that? What is that? Was it? Was it you that did it? You let it mow it down for Brian. Fireman Goopy was reported to have a smirk from ear to ear. So, Dad enlisted in the Fire Brigade in Ingham, where he spent 2 years there prior to coming to Redcliffe in 1962. He retired in 1994, not 44. After surfing all weekend, I would love going to the Fire Brigade to play tennis with mates on a Sunday afternoon. At times, Dad would have the odd quick hit with us, but he was in his long fire brigade pants and long sleeve shirt. So on a hot summer's day, that's not real good. The first car that I ever bought was an old Ford Transit van. It was in poor condition and had to be stripped down and repainted. The roof was white, and the roof was to be white, and below the windows was to be painted blue. The fire chief said Dad could paint it at the fire brigade. So Dad, I'm going to get this in the light. So Dad started it, but due to circumstances, it sat there for a little longer than the chief wanted. He told us to get it done or get it out. Dad painted the roof white just as I wanted. He then masked and covered the white up with newspaper so not to get an overrun. He then painted the rest of the blue. It looked great until we pulled the newspaper off. The roof had all the latest newsprint from the last month embedded in the white paint. We then bought black and white floral type curtains because the windows all round, which blended in nicely. It's still my favourite car. Dad had many talents which wasn't unique for those brought up on a farm. You had to fix it yourself or it would come to a halt. He learnt mechanical work and taught me a couple of things and not too much more, as I wasn't good with cars. I surprised myself one time when I fixed up a split and leaking water pump diaphragm and managed to get back from the Sunshine Coast to Redcliffe. By remembering what he said. He was Mr. Fix-It. He was Mr. Fix-It, cane cutter, carpenter, mechanic, cabinet maker. He enjoyed a punt and had a couple of racehorses owned by my Uncle Joe, fireman Nev Harrop, and Dad, naturally. Arnie Esme was also, who also recently passed away, also had horses that Dad took an interest in those too. Arnie Es, who passed in December, and Dad had a very close relationship and very similar beautiful natures. I am sure they will be with Mum and all watching down on this now. I know that you know. But I'll always love you, Dad. Thank you.
Kieth, Keithy, Beefy, my papa. This is my letter to you on behalf of your grandsons, Carl, Dane, Reese and Nathan, and me, Melinda, Minda, your only little granddaughter. Yeah. How blessed we are to have had you as our papa, Beef. To us, you are a confident, a safe space, our cheerleader, our protector, and our friend. I remember as a kid being bounced on your knee, having horsey rides, you teaching me how to use your tools, listening to your tunes on the piano accordion, you making us steak and eggs at any time of the day. We also fondly remember having Christmas parties at the fire stations with you, riding along in the train, each getting a brown bag of lollies which was quickly devoured and a brown bag of fruit which was never touched. Christmas morning at your home with what seemed like the whole of Redcliffe in attendance was just testament to the man that you were. So welcoming, friendly, always ready to be there for anyone, and so loved by your community. I loved hearing your stories of childhood, of your work as a prison guard and a fireman, of your love for Nanabet and your love for all things football and tennis. You were so very proud of us grandkids, each walking our own paths. You would always show up and make us feel important. Even in your depths of sadness when Bet had just passed, you were the one who made sure we all stopped grieving for long enough to log on to watch Dane surf and beat his idol Ockie live. You were so excited, happy and proud. Thank you for always being present at our sporting events, our school events, our family events. Thank you for taking me to France and to England, for visiting me in Perth, for letting me move into your home, not once, but twice. Thank you for always having chocolate-covered honeycomb in the fridge. But most of all, thank you for loving us all and for always showing us that you were proud of who we were, what we were achieving, and who we were becoming. Okay. That's all right.
Hello. I didn't really plan anything. I just had memories of Papa and me growing up. Probably my main memory is back when he was fixing the house, like Michelle said. I remember one time he was hammering in all these nails, and I remember I came home real proud to show Dad all my nails that Papa would let me hammer in, and there was about 100 nails bent up on the thing. And Dad used to tell me, oh, I'd hate to see the person that pulls up that floor and sees all those nails in that house. Probably a lot of my other memories are mostly with going to soccer with him and him taking me to soccer. Probably I used to hear about all the time after the game when other people would do stuff, and he'd always say, was that Nathan that did that? Whenever I got in trouble from the referee, he always wasn't very happy about the referee. But yeah, even later in life, probably memories that just being able to talk to him, and he loved all his grandchildren, and yeah, we'll miss him. Yeah, that's about it.
It's a privilege to have been asked to speak on behalf of Kieth, who, like all of you here today, was known to me for many, many years. After hearing Mark and Melinda and Nathan and Mindy, it's not an awful lot for me to add, and I'm going to be very brief. Brief for three reasons. One, because any memories that I have, I think most of the people in this room would share very similar memories. So it would be like preaching to the converted. Second reason is that I was only informed that I was saying anything today when I read the order of ceremony. Thanks, Mark. I had spoken, so I hadn't really had any time to prepare and think about what I might add to what has already been said. I think I said there was a third reason, but I've forgotten what that is, so I'll move on. I heard David talk about use the term time. Time was something that Kieth always had for everyone. Always had for me, always had for his family, always had for my family. Loved hearing about his role in his grandchildren's lives. He had a similar role in my children's lives. He came to Irish dancing concerts, came to games just to watch my children play, welcomed me and my family into his house at Christmas time, and was always there to listen, not to preach, to give advice and just provide support. And I suspect he was the same with all of you. I didn't know his history in terms of what a fantastic variety of jobs that he undertook, and what a magnificently long life that he had. Very, very interesting and lovable man. I saw him in 2019 when he had a bit of a turn, and I remember talking to him and sensing that he was ready to go then. So that's 4 years ago. He soldiered on, and he's been out at Seabrae Manor for the last few years, and my mother's out there as well, so I've been able to have a chat with him and see him quite regularly. So I feel a little bit privileged. He started to lose strength and started to lose the capacity to communicate, but the strong ox that he was soldiered on for all this time. Mark was visiting him regularly, Melinda was visiting regularly, and I'd see them talking to each other, or Melinda reading to him out the front, so it was a joy to see. Glad that everyone's here to celebrate his life. I certainly will never forget him, nor will my wife Nari and my children. And glad that everyone here has a smile on their face, because that's exactly how Kieth made us feel when he was alive, and exactly how he would want us to remember him. Thank you.
We've been here too many times, haven't we? Uncle Kieth, what a bloke, what a man. A man who showed me what being a man was all about. The partnership between himself and Bet, bless you Nana Bet, was something to admire, and I never shied away from spending an hour or so inside their home as we had coffees and teas, all the time I was getting paid working for Mark. Sorry, Moff, they were just too kind to walk away from. When we began playing senior football at PCYC, Kieth was there on the sidelines, giving his 2 cents to the referee when he needed it, especially after someone had challenged Nathan a bit too hard. I remember spending hours on his back porch, making plaques for presentation night, and he would share with me stories about my old men. Being John's son meant that Kieth had plenty of stories to share with me during his days playing football on the peninsula. He would often remind me of how many times he took Dad inside after a night out down at Redcliffe's finest establishments, no matter what time of the night it was. That's who Kieth was, though. A caring and loving man who did so much for others and wanted nothing in return. I'll never forget when we were 19. A few of us had a pretty big night on Christmas Eve, and we weren't feeling so crash hot when we arrived at Kieth and Bet's house on Christmas morning. Kieth sat me down on the couch next to the door and handed me a can of beer and said, "You need this." He walked away. 10 minutes later, he came back and he said, "Better?" To which I had no chance of replying before he handed me another one. Kieth's impact on this world is evident here today as I look out and see so many familiar faces and people that have been brought together through the love and generosity that he showed in his life. That is the legacy of the man. His kindness, commitment, and loving nature is what you should be remembering here today. The sadness that we all feel is a natural emotion. It is sad that someone so supportive is no longer with us. To all of the Offer family, just know that you had someone that loved you all very much. He would often share with me on his back porch how proud he was with each and every one of you. When the time comes that you feel like you need some help with anything in life, close your eyes and feel Kieth's presence. He will always be there to guide you. To Kieth, you are now home with your wife, Nana Bet. Rest in peace, mate. You're a bloody legend.
If we each took time to share memory today, we'd be here all afternoon, because there's lots of stories to tell of Kieth, isn't there? And not only do we think of Kieth alone today, we always think of Bet, because they're a team, weren't they? And whether you think of her, the jewellers up at Kippering with Doug, or if you think about Kieth at the fire brigade, the ripple effect of their lives is far greater than we can ever measure. Kieth looking after people as he went to fight a fire. And for all of our fighters, they influence many people's lives more than they think and more than we know. And Kieth was like that. You were here because of that, because of his influence. And we say thank you for him today. We're going to continue to pay tribute to him in pictures and music, as you will see on the screen.
I'm saving my money to buy you a rainbow to fit on your finger. After I've gone and bought you the rainbow, I'll go out and I'll buy you the moon. When we go walking side by side in the moonlight, we'll count the stars as we go strolling by. Maybe one day we'll own those beautiful diamonds that glisten like the teardrops from your eyes. You know how I feel on a moment like this, when hand in hand, when we reminisce. Your eyes seem to glow when you whisper low, oh, I really love you.
I wandered today to the hills, Maggie, to watch the scene below. The creek and the creaking old mill, Maggie, as we used to long, long ago. The green grove is gone from the hills, Maggie, where first the daisy sprung. The creaking old mill is still, Maggie, since you and I were young. Oh, they say that I'm feeble with age, Maggie. My steps are much slower than them. My face is a well-written page, Maggie, and time all alone was the pen. They say we have outlived our time, Maggie, as dated as songs that we've sung. But to me, you're as fair as you were, Maggie, when you and I were young. They say we have songs that we've sung. But to me, you're as fair as you were, Maggie, when you and I were young. When you and I were young.
Where the heather bells are blooming just outside Granny's door, whereas laddies there we played in days of long ago, 'neath the shadow of Benbraggie and Golspie's lordly stane. How I wished that I could see my granny's heel and cane. Far away in the Heelands there stands a wee house, and it stands on the breast o' the brae, where we played as laddies there long, long ago, and it seems it was just yesterday. I can still see old Granny, a smile on her face, just as sweet as the heather dew. When she kissed me goodbye, with a tear in her eye, said, "Laddie, may God bless you." Well, the heather bells are blooming just outside Granny's door, whereas laddies there we played in days of long ago, 'neath the shadow of Benbraggie and Golspie's lordly stane. How I wished that I could see my granny's heel and
You sheltered me from harm, kept me warm, kept me warm. You gave my life to me, set me free, set me free. The finest years I ever knew were all the years I had with you. And I would give anything I own, give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give everything I own just to have you back again. You taught me how to love, what it's up, what it's up. You never said too much, but still you showed the way, and I knew from watching you.
just to have you back again. Is there someone you know, you're loving them so, but taking them all for granted? You may lose them one day, someone takes them away, and they don't hear the words you long to say. I would give anything.
Now that my earthly journey's through, from pain I'm now set free. I say goodbye to all of you, but please remember me. I've left the body I've called home, I've run my final race, and now I'm heading off to meet my Maker face to face. Goodbye, my friends and loved ones all. Please hold me in your heart. I've done the best I can on earth, but now it's time to part. And if you must, please shed a tear, then wipe it, let it be, and say goodbye as home I go. But please remember me. When death parts us, friends, it's hard, isn't it? It's tough to say goodbye. But when we're parted from people who play such an important role in our lives, if we're wise, we take some time aside and think about some of the things we've learned from that relationship. As you think about Kieth today and your relationship with him, as you've walked the journey beside him, as he has walked tough journeys, good journeys, perhaps it is that you've learned something about yourself. When you think about it, I'm sure that you've learned about your own strengths and your own weaknesses, seeing his. Maybe it is that you've learned about courage and fight for the day, about tolerance and caring, about understanding, about giving or loving. And I know you've learnt what it is to be family together. You will have learned that life is not always the way we expect or want it to be, though, is it? But the sun still shines and people still smile. The world goes on regardless of how we feel, and sometimes we just wonder why. Why is it that life turns out the way that it does sometimes? I don't know the answer to that question why fully just yet. I expect that one day when I walk through the doorway of death, I get to ask the question again and get a few more answers. But in the meantime, I think we need to learn from life and death and learn that life is a fragile thing. I think we need to learn that we ought to make the most out of our lives. Learn to forgive when others get it wrong and learn to receive that when we might get it wrong. For life's far too short to hang on to those little differences that come sometimes. It's to be lived the best way that we can. And perhaps today is a day just to reassess our own values, reassess our own priorities, and recognise just how silly and trivial are most of the matters that rouse us to anger or frustration. We don't know what lies around the next corner for each of us, let alone for those we love. So my encouragement to us today is that we make life count today, that we make life count every day, for life is a gift, not something to take for granted. So as you think about Kieth today, make your decision to give into life, and not just life, but the people who are in your life, to give into them with generosity, with that support. And as I spent time together with Mark, one of the words that came up as we spoke about Kieth, and that word is safe, that he was a safe man to be with. So be safe with your people in your lives and treasure those relationships and give into life. I'm going to offer a brief prayer before we conclude our service here today and we take Kieth from this place and see him on his way. Would you bow your heads with me, please? Dear God, our Father, today as we come into this place, we celebrate an awesome man, a wonderful gift to each one of us here. When we think of his character, we think of all of those wonderful times shared together with him. We think of his support and his generosity. We think of his love and his affection, his loyalty and his devotion. We think of so many wonderful qualities that have come from this man. We say thank you that he was a man of faith as well. He trusted you. In the midst of our pain today, help us to trust you. Give us the gift of peace and calm and comfort today as we walk a tough journey. Help us by coming into our lives and giving us the sense of your presence and your reality and the strength we need to face the days ahead. Come amongst us here and give us that sense of corporate peace as we walk this journey today together. We give Kieth into your hands, dear God, where he is safe, where he is secure. There's no more pain or suffering with you. There's no more fear, no more limitation. He's now perfect with his bet and with you. He wouldn't want anything else. So we give him to you in the name of Jesus with that gratitude on our hearts and our lips. Amen. Shortly after the service, we will take Kieth from the chapel. The firefighters are going to form a guard of honour down the aisle, and I think that's very fitting. And then as you come out and you see the hearse depart, it will be escorted by one of the fire trucks to the corner, and the truck will be at the corner. And as the hearse comes behind that truck, another truck will join and they will escort him away. And I think that's really fitting, isn't it? So shortly we will stand. And then if you can please remain, there will be a cup of tea and coffee and some biscuits served outside. So if you can share that time together as well. Please stand with me as a sign of respect. For inasmuch as it has pleased God to take to himself the soul of Kieth Angus offer he departed, we commit this, his earthly body, to be cremated, ashes to ashes and dust to dust, with the sure and certain hope that we will meet again one day, Kieth. May you rest in peace. And as we go from this place today, let us go with the deep sadness of farewell. But let us go too with the gladness of life together. Go with the smile because Kieth has been a part of your life. Go with the tears because you have to say goodbye. Go with all of them and remember him. And may God bless you. Thank you.
Like a bull for a spin, I was lifted up again. I was lifted up again by the Lord. No matter where I roam, I will find my way back home. God, shine a light on me. Open up my eyes so I can see. When I look up in the darkest night, then I know everything is gonna be alright. In deep confusion, in great despair, when I reach out for him, he is there. When I am lonely as I can be, and I know that God shines his light on me. Reach out for him, reach out for him. He'll be there, he'll be there. With him your troubles, with him your troubles, you can share, you can share. If you live, if you live, the life you love, the life you love, you get the blessing, yeah, from above, from above. Heals the sick, and he heals the lame. Says you can do it too, in Jesus' name.